Hi there, I'm Mikkel Storsley, Superintendent of Grayslake High School District 127. I'd like to update you on our progress toward getting students back in our buildings. At our July 30th school board meeting, I communicated a tentative timeline for our school year that went something like this. In phase 1, we would start the year remotely, which we did August 20th. In phase 2, we would gradually bring in groups of students after Labor Day, and we'd make a decision about a potential hybrid model in early October. Our target date at that time was to decide whether to come back in a hybrid model in what would be phase 3 on around the start of quarter 2. Now, all of this was based on numerous factors. At that time in July, as we looked at the start of school in mid-August, we did not have consistent health information, and we weren't confident in how to interpret the health information we did get from the county and from the state and from the federal government. We were not confident that safety procedures were clear either. Now, we spent a lot of time on our hybrid model. Remember that remote learning would still have provided the basis of instruction, and we considered bringing in 33% of our students 1 day per week to work with teachers and staff. So both the remote learning and the in-person components of our model were completely new and untested. And again, that was in the middle of a situation in which we had no clarity on the indicators we should be using to keep students and staff safe. Out of an abundance of caution, we decided to postpone the decision on the in-person part of hybrid learning. And in retrospect, it was absolutely the right choice, given the amount of adjustments that have had to be made just with remote instruction. And we have increased clarity now on the virus and increased clarity on what schools need to focus on to keep students and staff safe. So what I'd like to do today is to update you, our community, on our thinking, given what we've learned since late July through working with our health departments, communicating with surrounding districts who are trying just as hard to make this work for students, and a full month of remote learning. Now, is it all perfect? No. Are we still learning? Absolutely. But the collective knowledge we've built is pretty considerable. I can say we know more now. We know better. And when you know better, you can do better. So ultimately, all of this is informing our decisions on an updated hybrid proposal moving forward, and I will share some details on that in just a few minutes. Before I get to that, throughout this process, we've committed to a slow and steady increase of bringing students back into our buildings, and let me update you on that progress. Now, our first attempt to bring students back has been through our athletic department. I'd like to remind the community that sports participation is guided by the Illinois High School Association, IHSA, and the State Board of Education, sometimes known as ISB. We do not make the decisions on which sports compete, which sports practice, and which sports can't. We follow the rules set forth, and we try to keep the maximum number of students involved that we can. But that being said, we have athletes in and around our buildings every day. In the fall, we've had almost 300 athletes across the district in cross country, in tennis and golf. Those are sports that are allowed to compete. And furthermore, we've had over 800 students enroll in what are called contact days, meaning those students can work with coaches on sports-specific instruction. In addition, we administered the SAT to over 600 seniors on September 23rd and 24th. Per school code, most students must take the SAT to graduate, and that test was scheduled for these seniors in April when they were juniors. The September test date was to make up for that date that was canceled. Students were in groups no larger than 10, socially distanced, and wearing masks. Test proctors and other school staff went through considerable yet necessary logistical hoops to ensure a quality test-taking environment for all of our students. In all, we had about 50 rooms that are being used in each building. In addition, our career technology education, CTE, students returned partially this week. Students enrolled in woodworking, metals, small engine repair, and mobile makers, and that's a programming class that requires Macintosh computers in our labs. They're going to return 1 day per week to engage in hands-on projects. Approximately 100 students will be in district classrooms throughout the week, and again, no class sizes over 10. Now, although not in District 127 buildings, I want to note that the tech campus at the College of Lake County has begun hybrid classes, and around 20 of our students have been participating in in-person learning since September 21st. Now, in all, we've had fewer than 10 positively confirmed cases reported on D127 campuses. This is due to the dedication of our staff, our students, and our parents in ensuring proper masking, proper social distancing, and what we believe is the correct use of personal protective equipment in our buildings. Now, our staff spends a great deal of time tracking possible cases. So people who have symptoms, or maybe they've come in contact with somebody like a family member who's tested positive. Even though we thankfully have fewer than 10 positive cases that we know of in the district thus far, the amount of tracking is considerable. It will continue to be considerable. Now, this is not to say there's no risk. I would be lying if I suggested otherwise, but we appear to be doing the right things so far to keep people safe. We're always learning, always trying to improve, but we have a staff who is very serious about doing things right. Now let's talk about health metrics. As I noted, in late July, there was a distinct lack of clarity on the metrics to look at for schools, what the acceptable ranges for infections would look like, and what the procedures should be for opening schools and procedures in the likelihood of a positive case. All of that was still being developed, and quite frankly, it was all over the place. Information was changing daily. Sometimes it felt like multiple times per day. We could not, in July, in good conscience, open up our schools to in-person learning without more clarity and more support from our health officials. And I want to say, this is not to cast aspersions on any of our health officials. Between the Lake County Department of Health, the Illinois Department of Public Health, IHSA, ISB, the Governor's Office, the CDC, there are a lot of procedures, a lot of organizations, a lot of lines of communication that had to be established, right? We keep saying the word unprecedented. It was unprecedented for them too. But since late July, Lake County superintendents have developed a really excellent relationship with the Lake County Department of Health as our main contact for accurate information. We meet weekly to discuss new developments and in keeping infection rates down. We talk about the trends that they see in our communities and how do we ensure that we're following the proper procedures. As you might imagine, there are a tremendous number of details and an infinite number of unique situations to be sorted through. They've been an invaluable resource. Now, in particular, they have helped us identify the key health measures that we should be monitoring and what those numbers mean in terms of the type of education model we might be able to offer. And I want to discuss those measures now. Now, I'd first like to discuss the positivity rate, and that's a very typical number you'll see on the news. If you're, they typically talk about the positivity rate when they talk about states. For example, the state of Illinois' positivity rate is around 3.8% overall, and that's just the number of positive cases divided by the total number of tests. What percent of your tests are positive, right? We'd also like to talk about the incidence rate, and that's the number of new cases standardized to a number of 100,000 residents in the county. So we can take that number, we can compare Lake County to Kenosha County, to Cook County, to LA County. It just gives you a sense of how many new cases are popping up in the county. We'll also look at COVID-19-like illness hospital admissions, right? The number of like illnesses across all ages. Really, it's just a measure of, are our hospitals filling up, right? And finally, the testing turnaround time, the average number of days between when a sample is collected and when that sample is entered in the electronic lab reporting system. As you might imagine, a testing turnaround time of 14 days doesn't do us any good. In that time, somebody who's tested positive is out there infecting lots of people. We want to make sure people know if they're positive in a very short amount of time so they can quarantine, so they can keep away, they're not infecting others, and the Lake County Department of Health has a much easier time doing contact tracing when that testing time is very short. Now, based on guidance from the Lake County Department of Health and the Illinois Department of Public Health, we've developed a dashboard to help us make decisions. In other words, what do these numbers mean? What do they mean for what type of education we want to provide, whether it's all remote, whether it's some hybrid, or whether it's all in person? When are these numbers safe for any of those types of educational models? Now, this is a lot of information. Let me just give a little bit of context. The four numbers we just talked about are the test positivity rate, the average incidence rate, illness admissions, and testing turnaround time. What our departments of health, Lake County Department of Health and the Illinois Department of Public Health, has helped us with is help us understand what these numbers mean and what the ranges should be for different types of educational models. The idea is schools are advised to meet all metrics before moving to a new phase. So for example, we would want to see these numbers, and we'll take a look at real-time numbers in just a second. All of them should be in green. All of them should be in green for a relatively consistent amount of time. What we're going to see is some of these numbers on any one day might be in the in-person range, and then the next day it might be up to the virtual range. So let's take a look.